These are 8 players you need to trade away now in fantasy football before it's too late. Starting at number 8 with Alvin Kamara, who's coming off a monster performance. This is the perfect sell high opportunity. Obviously, a game like this is unsustainable. It's not going to continue as he had 4 total touchdowns. Should have had 5 if Derek Carr didn't sneak it in from the 1-yard line. 44 fantasy points. This is a running back that has shown us over the last couple of years that he's very inefficient on the ground. His advanced rushing metrics continue to decline. He's lost burst. He's lost explosiveness. Granted, he didn't really show that on Sunday, but it's not like this is a 23-year-old running back who is just entering his prime. He's on his way out. On top of that, the Saints offensive line, kind of shaky. It looks good right now, but it's something that could change. And Alvin Kamara last year also got off to a scorching hot start and then cooled off the second half of the season. I'm not saying just give Alvin Kamara away to anyone who wants him. No, sell him high. If you can get the absolute house for Kamara, then do it. This Saints offense is also scoring at such an insane, crazy rate. That's going to come back down to earth. I believe they've only punted once in the first 2 games. So like I said, if you can get a premium player or 2 for Alvin, then you have to absolutely take it. But don't sell him for cheap. This is, like I said, a sell high opportunity on a guy that's coming off an incredible game that no one saw coming, that you can probably get someone in your league really excited about him and probably get a lot in return if that's what you want to do. At number 7, Derrick Henry. While he hasn't completely burned you through the first 2 weeks of the season, it's hard to feel encouraged or excited with what we've seen so far. Remember, the Ravens lost 3 starting offensive linemen this offseason, and that has been evident in the minimal running lanes for King Henry. Henry had 5 rushing yards on 7 carries in the first half of week 2. And yes, he still managed to run for 18 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. But those are major red flags for me. Derrick has also been outsnapped in both games by Justice Hill because Henry is a game script dependent back. If the Ravens are trailing or if they're in pass down situations, Henry is coming off the field. So he's going to be limited in that sense. That's not ideal, but that's kind of what you signed up for when you drafted Henry, because you knew he wasn't going to be in the pass game work, and you knew that he kind of sometimes can get scripted out of games. So on top of that, it's a average offensive line on an offense that's kind of underperforming, and Derrick Henry's just getting older. He's 30 years old. So all those things combined together, I have no problem selling him now after he's coming off a relatively solid game if your other league mates aren't really looking into exactly what happened. And Baltimore's next 3 games are not ideal for Henry either. Dallas, Buffalo, and Cincinnati. All those games, it's very realistic to think that the Ravens will be trailing in all 3. So let's say you're 0-2 right now. I think you absolutely need to sell Henry for a different piece. Obviously, it depends on your roster construction and the other running backs that you have, but it's going to be difficult to trust him over this next stretch. At number 6, Jaylen Waddle. It pains me to have Waddle on this list. I drafted a lot of Jaylen this offseason. I was extremely high on him, and this has nothing to do with Jaylen the player. It's all has to deal with Tua being on IR, missing the next 4 weeks. I mean, listen, I wouldn't be surprised if Tua doesn't play the rest of the year. These concussions are serious. He might not get cleared from the doctors, so we don't really know what's going to happen. I'm going under the approach, though, that Tua's going to miss the next 4 games and probably longer. And so you're stuck with Skylar Thompson at quarterback, which we saw a little bit of what he did last week when he came in for Tua, and it wasn't great. Granted, obviously, that's tough for any quarterback to be thrown in like that, but I just don't think Skylar Thompson is a good quarterback whatsoever. It's going to hurt this offense. It's going to hurt Tyreek Hill. It's going to hurt Jaylen Waddle. I think Devon Achane is the only one that kind of survives, but I think it hurts him as well because I don't know how well this offense is going to even be able to move the football. But if there's someone in your league that's still optimistic, just because we haven't seen a full game of what this offense is going to look like without Tua, you can't wait until after this week to see what happens because there's a good shot that it looks terrible, that it's an absolute train wreck, and then Waddle is going to be very hard to sell. So you kind of have to be a forward thinker here. Obviously, it's a little bit risky. So don't just give Waddle up for scraps. Like, you want to get someone solid in return. I'm not saying just to give him away. This list is not players to give away. You want to get good value in return. You want to sell to a league mate that, like I said, still thinks that this offense will be okay without Tua. So try to sell Waddle now, because I am afraid that this Sunday is going to be an absolute disaster. And after that, it's going to be really hard to get rid of these players. Obviously, Tyreek Hill, you can probably still trade Tyreek Hill. You can probably still trade all of these guys, but the price will go down if this Sunday is an absolute train wreck with Thompson under center. At number 5, Devonte Adams was on his way to a dud of a week 2. Like, you look up and he's just going nuts in the fourth quarter. Somehow finished with 12 targets, 9 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown, 32% target share. I think this is the perfect opportunity to sell high in Adams. I've been down on Adams all offseason. I've been down on Gardner Minshew, on this offense as a whole, and I could be wrong. But if you can get a lot for Adams in return, let's say the Jamar Chase owner in your league is willing to give you Chase for Adams, then that's a no-brainer. You absolutely have to do it. My main concern with Adams rest of season is just this offense. I don't trust this scheme. I don't trust the creativity of this offense. It's boring. They like to run the football. Devonte Adams is entering his age 32 season. While he hasn't looked like he's missed a step, there's still always concern for these guys get hurt a lot easier the older they get. And I just don't really like Gardner Minshew. On top of that, Brock Bowers, who's a buy for me in a previous video, is absolutely exploding. So Adams is going to have more target competition on an offense that I don't know if it can support 2 really good fantasy players on a weekly basis. We saw it last week, right? But how consistent is this going to be? I still think with Gardner Minshew, with this offense, you're going to have really good games for Devonte Adams coming up, but then a lot of bad games as well. And if I can get a more consistent piece with more consistent upside, then I'd absolutely do it. At number 4, Amari Cooper. I want nothing to do with this Browns offense. Literally nothing. Deshaun Watson is cooked. He's washed. He's terrible. Whatever you want to say, like, that trade that the Browns made for Watson is going to go down as one of the worst trades in NFL history, along with the Bryce Young trade. And then on top of that, Amari Cooper doesn't look great either. He looks uninterested. He's making uncharacteristic mistakes, easy drops. Cooper is the wide receiver 88 in fantasy right now with 5 catches for 27 yards through 2 games. So he might be a tough sell, honestly. I don't know who in the right mind is going to want Amari Cooper on their team. Maybe someone thinks that this is going to turn around. I think if Cooper strings together another poor performance, it's only going to get more difficult. So I would be sending out offers if you are an Amari owner to get him off your team. Even looking at the advanced metrics, Cooper ranks 81st in separation, 94th in route win rate. Get Amari off your team now, because even looking at that just confirms that maybe Amari is hitting that age cliff, 29, 30 years old, with a bad quarterback on a bad offense. Like, these are guys that you just don't want to draft in the first place. But I understand Amari Cooper did look good with Watson last season, but either Deshaun Watson stinks or he's hurt. Like, there's just no hope. Joe Flacco's gone. There's nothing to get excited about. So get Cooper off your team. Do whatever it takes to get rid of him this week. At number 3, Kiron Williams. He was a must sell for me last week, and here we are. He's back on the list, and unfortunately, his situation has only gotten worse as the Rams offense has been completely derailed by injuries. This offensive line is a mess. You already lost Puka and now Cooper Kupp. How is this Rams offense expected to move the football? How are they ever going to be in scoring position? There's no one on this team to really count on anymore. How do you effectively run the football when you don't have an offensive line? Like, Matthew Stafford is just getting killed in the pocket last week against a team that has a terrible pass rush. That was the Cardinals. Like, they have no one on the defensive line, and Stafford was on his back what felt like every single play. So it's only going to get worse from here. Like, this is another team right now. I don't want anyone on this offense. Like, if you're a Stafford owner, you're completely panicking. And if you drafted Kiron in round 2, it's just not looking good right now. Like, while Kiron is still getting the majority of the snaps, he's not making the most of his opportunities. 2.8 yards per carry in week 1, 2.1 yards per carry in week 2. Like, yes, you can blame some of that on what we just talked about. This offense now stinks. They don't have any offensive linemen. Those are all fair. I also just don't think Kiron looks that good. Like in week 1, I was like, kind of looked like a different player. I don't know what it was. And on top of that, you're only going to see Blake Corum get involved more and more as the weeks go on. Like, I'd be looking to sell Kiron on his high snap share. He's been able to fall into the end zone the last 2 games. Like, if you can sell someone on that, maybe pitch to another owner that he's going to be the focal point of this offense now, and he is going to get fed, which could happen. I just don't think it's going to be a good offense, and I just don't think they're going to move the football. They're not going to be in scoring position often. And it's a bummer because this Rams offense, if everyone would have stayed healthy, was probably going to be one of the best offenses in the league, and now it's a complete disaster. At number 2, Aaron Jones. It feels like the tides are turning in this Minnesota backfield, and I'd rather just be prepared than surprised. Here's what I mean by that. I think Ty Chandler is really emerging into a serious threat on the Vikings in this backfield, and I think it's just going to hurt Aaron Jones's overall value. Jones did not look good last week. He had 9 carries for 32 yards. He fumbled the ball. Ty Chandler had 10 carries for 82 yards. Like, Chandler looks explosive. At times, Chandler looks like the better back. I'm just worried about Jones overall because he's a 30-year-old running back that gets injured often, that tends to be injury prone, and I'm just worried that Ty Chandler is going to continue to eat into his workload and really taking Jones out of that workhorse role. I'd be looking to sell Jones if you can get a good value for him right now, because I think after the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a 50-50 timeshare in Minnesota, and Jones's overall value is going to decrease. At number 1, Sam Laporta, the tight end 1 overall in fantasy last year, is having a really rough start to the season. As this entire Detroit offense is, they look out of whack. Jared Goff does not look good, and the emergence of Jameson Williams is really hurting Laporta's value overall. Laporta has 6 catches for 58 yards and 0 touchdowns through 2 games compared to Williams, who has 10 catches for 200 yards and a score. Like, Goff isn't even looking for Laporta. It's Amon-Ra and J-Mo. Laporta has an 11.8% target share, which is a bottom 5 mark for tight ends so far this season. And unless an injury occurs to one of these Detroit wide receivers or Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm worried about Laporta. I think he's going to be hard to trust on a weekly basis, but yes, he's a tight end. Most tight ends stink or they're inconsistent, so this is kind of a tricky one. Like, what do you really do here? If Laporta is your only tight end, you probably just have to ride it out. But if for some reason you drafted Laporta and then scooped up Brock Bowers in the later rounds, then try to shop Laporta now before he strings together another bad game. I mean, he could turn this around. It could very well happen. I'm discouraged. Jameson Williams is a thing this year because we've seen it now in 2 games. Like, after week 1, I was like, I don't think this is going to continue. And now it's like, if you watch Detroit's games, like, Jared Goff feels like he's looking for Jameson more than Amon-Ra at times. So that's concerning for Laporta. Like I said, if he's your only tight end on your roster, then there's probably not much you can do. You probably have to ride it out. But if you have a second tight end like Brock Bowers, that would be the ideal situation. Then I'd absolutely be looking to shop Sam immediately. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you got anything from the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. It helps me out more than you know. And I will see you in the next one.